2019 is wrapping up, so we're taking a look back at some of our favorite games of the year, this time with our favorite open world games from 2019. Now keep in mind, a lot of games came out this year that were kind of like hybrid open world, Metroidvania stuff. Fallen Order's maps are massive, so are Metro Exodus's. We tried to focus on the ones that had one or two solely large open sandbox environments. And we always have to have a disclaimer, these are our personal choices here at the GameRanks office. We're gonna disagree, so we're curious to hear what yours are down in the comments. Anyway, let's get started off with number 10 and talk about quite an underrated, smaller game called Undefeated. Now, this was sort of an experimental project. It's available only on PC, but essentially what it is kind of like a big open world Superman simulator. You are a superpowered being who is, you know, in quotes, not Superman, but you still have a lot of things at your disposal from powers and of course flight and a surprising amount of destruction, and honestly, it's really, really fun. Is it an epic, long, open-world AAA game? No, not at all. Is it a fun sandbox superhero game to mess around with for a while? Yeah, you betcha. We were surprised how much fun we had with this, and we just wanted to put it on more people's radar. So, there it is. Now next over at number 9, we have Tom Clancy's The Division 2. This released earlier in the year, and say what you want about the game. Very divided, of course, as a games as a service game. Some people think it definitely lost steam and fizzled out pretty quickly, even more so than the first game. But whether or not that is the case, there is no denying that The Division 2 was a marked improvement over the original game by far. But the biggest thing, what it really scores points for here in our little debate, was the fact that the world itself they created was really awesome. We said it with the first Division, but Massive Entertainment does an incredible job at crafting realistic worlds. They knocked it out of the park with New York City in the original Division as native New Yorkers, and now here with Washington, D.C. in a Division 2, once again, they show that they are really good at building convincing worlds where you run around and shoot people and, you know, drop loot and stuff like that. From the sense of detail to just the scope of the city itself and also the variety that it comes with is really, really impressive and made the game that much more fun because of the exploration. Especially considering it's a games as a service game, it's a looty shooty raid type of game. You don't really think about exploration, but when a game looks and is as authentic as this, that's why we considered it. Very curious to hear what you guys think about this one, especially if you live in Virginia or Washington, D.C. Anyway, let's move on to number 8 and talk about Outward, a game that, we'll be completely honest, we kind of missed the boat on. A lot of people asked us to talk about it. It was seemingly really underrated, but we just didn't get to it in time, which is unfortunate because by the time we did finally get around to it, we realized this is a really good open world RPG. The main open world serves as a playground for you to create a character in a fantasy role-playing game that has quite a bit of challenge to it and a lot of appreciation for more nuanced mechanics, more of the finer stuff, like very, very carefully managing, you know, warmth and cold and hunger and fatigue. You can be jailed, the interactions with NPCs are really unique, and the entire game can be played cooperatively, which is absolutely worth pointing out. The world of Ori is really big, and the game is very interesting in how it handles death or lack thereof, but what it is going to certainly do is make you want to keep exploring. The atmosphere is solid, the visuals are alright, just generally, it's worth checking out if you love fantasy RPGs. Now next over at number 7 we have Supraland, a game that we've recommended quite a few times because it's a little underrated, it's been flying under the radar, but it's a really, really cool PC adventure game. It puts you in a big sandbox world, literally, actually, because you're kind of like these small toy objects in a world kind of like, think Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, like you're down to toy size and you're dealing with all that stuff. There is combat, there is exploration, but the big focus is puzzles. This is first and foremost really a puzzle game, and it's an incredibly satisfying one. It's all Metroidvania style, but it is in first person, and that really gives you kind of like the sense of size, the sense of scale here for you being a tiny object in a massive real world. It was also made by like one dude, which is also really impressive. When you look past the flaws, what you do see is just a creative and challenging first-person puzzle game with a pretty good world size that makes you want to explore it, thanks to those Metroidvania elements. Honestly, it's a weird one. We like to throw weird ones on these types of lists to kind of shake it up and not just kind of have the conventional stuff, so consider checking it out. Next over at number 6, since we are talking about underrated games, we have The Outer Wilds, which seems like here at the office is a couple of our guys' most favorite game of the year. Without spoiling it, maybe The the elevator pitch, Outer Wilds is kind of a, think No Man's Sky, but a little more of an indie feel with a little bit more of a constrained focus on storytelling, world building, and mystery and atmosphere. And although it is smaller in scope than some other space games we have seen, there is a lot here. You're free to hop in your ship and fly around wherever you want. You land on a planet, and you have the freedom to essentially walk the whole distance of a planet. So it's really kind of open world exploration in a lot of unique ways, but the game just has so much charm to it and so much unique atmosphere and vibe and just cool looking space alien characters that you just can't help but kind of like get sucked in by it, you know? That to us is the mark of a good world, or in this case, worlds. So that's why, please, we definitely recommend checking out the Outer Wilds. Now over at number 5, we have Rage 2, which yes, that released this year. It seems to have kind of flown by, but when you think about it, they did build a damn good world here. Taking place after the events of the first Rage game, it definitely improves things here with just way more exciting and focused shooting with a bunch of powers that you can level up and earn your way towards, and some really, really creative guns and vehicles. But the actual world itself, the world of Rage 2, is absolutely massive, and you can traverse it in a variety of different ways, from motorcycles, cool post-apocalyptic trucks, and also hovercraft. Not only that, they also did a really good job of not just making it like, oh, the end of the world, it's all a desert, like Mad Max. They have a lot of variety here. There's forests, there's swamps, there's different types of deserts. I was genuinely surprised like how much I wanted to keep progressing through this world just to see what it's got. And there is quite a bit. Like I said, the sense of scale here, it does feel really massive, especially because you're traversing it all by vehicle. But thankfully, the in-betweens, the little stop-off points are very fun and interesting. Rage 2 is definitely not the best game of the year by far, but we just wanted to give props. We do like the world they crafted here. Next over at number 4, we have The Outer Worlds. It's a game that we keep mixing up and saying The Outer Wilds, and vice versa. It's definitely a thing when you talk about a lot of games, but The Outer Worlds is absolutely worth pointing out because we've highlighted it before. It was one of our most anticipated games of the year. It certainly lived up to expectations, and it's just a really exciting universe to explore. You know, the game is divided up into planets. It's not one massive sandbox, but still, some of the planets that you explore are very large, so we're considering it in that way. And honestly, this is kind of like the sequel to Fallout New Vegas we've always wanted, set in space. This is the type of game where you definitely want to explore every corner of your environments and every interior and stuff like that, because there is so much loot, there is so much to discover, but not only that, just really discovering and learning about the world is all the fun. Obsidian really built something unique here, just with this like corporately controlled space future that is incredibly cynical and also hilarious, that really like every inch, every document you pick up, every new weapon you look at, every can of food has some unique charm to it, some work put in, some writing put in for describing it, and we just really, really appreciate that stuff, and it really kind of heightened the Outer Worlds exploration elements, and we wanted to point that out. Expect the Outer Worlds to pop up on a lot of Game of the Year lists, because it's definitely a good one. And now, down to number 3, we have Far Cry New Dawn, another game that released way earlier in the year and is often forgotten in these types of things, but we really like what they did here because it was kind of a unique concept. You know, take the pretty much success that was Far Cry 5 and using the same elements and stuff, give us a little bit more, but with a unique spin. Take the, open world America that is Hope County, Montana, and put it in a post-apocalyptic setting carrying over from the end of Far Cry 5. And you know what? That actually worked out. It's really cool to go back in this game and see some of the stuff from the first game all overgrown and blown up and screwed up, inhabited or uninhabited in different ways. It was just a real fun adventure just for that reason alone. We're still hoping that the next Far Cry game gives us like a really big overhaul and a big change to just the whole loop, but there's no denying that Far Cry New Dawn at least gave us a fun and interesting new Far Cry world to explore. Well, actually technically not new, it's the same, but with a new spin, but we actually kind of like that. But down to number 2, we have Death Stranding, believe it or not, because we wanted to highlight it, because it's untraditionally an open world game. It does have side quests, but it doesn't feel like open world is like the main concept for the game, but there's no denying that the game is absolutely huge. The world is massive, and it makes you feel how massive it is by making you freaking walk across the whole thing. Now, whether you like that or not, the game is incredibly divisive still. We're still in the wake of it releasing. Now, there's no denying that the world itself is both 1, massive, and 2, really gorgeous. Something we want to point out and we want to give props to is how actually unforgiving and dangerous the territory feels. In other games, you see a rocky chunk of land and you can cheese your way up it, or you see a river and you don't really worry about it because your character is like this badass swimmer, of course. Now, Death Stranding makes you consider almost every step you take in this environment, even the boring parts. It is never easy getting around this world, but by them doing that, it kind of lets you really get to intimately know a lot of areas of it. Especially when you're going back and forth to an outpost, you start to get the feel for the land, you learn some shortcuts, you know which ways to avoid, and that coupled with the community building elements really makes the world and the areas you inhabit here kind of come to life as you explore them. And really, honestly, get lost in them. Death Stranding is incredibly unique, and whether you love it or hate it, we wanted to give props to its big old open world. Now down to number 1, we argued on this one for a while, but we chose Days Gone. Days Gone is another divisive game on this list, but it does seem like it has earned quite a bit of fans, and we included it on our open world list because frankly, we liked exploring it, and honestly, in a lot of ways, it's open world 101. Just in terms of like design, quest structure, where you find things. Days Gone wasn't like blowing things out of the water in terms of like innovation or newness, but exploring this world on your motorcycle with the main character, Deacon St. John, was satisfying for us. Although really the main thing for us was the story that kept us going. Honestly, the game may have stretched on a little bit too long, like outstayed its welcome a little bit. We still like cruising through these environments on our bike, occasionally getting into some scuffles, and really having some good showdowns with freakers, you know, bombing out their hideouts, creeping around towns, trying not to get spotted by them. That stuff was surprisingly satisfying. We weren't sure what to think of the game, but ultimately when we played it, we came away happy. It also looks damn good. The world they built representing the Northwest United States is pretty damn good to look at, so props to them for that. But of course, we got some more. We got some bonus games we wanted to highlight because there are just too many games this year. The first is Need for Speed Heat, which feels like Need for Speed is finally coming back around. It's not a bad game. It is also an open world racing game. Sure, the open world itself doesn't have a lot of life in it, but still, it's a great racing environment. You switch between night and day on the fly, the game renders the whole thing in night and day, and it's just very cool, so there you go. Also, Crackdown 3, which a lot of people have been kind of dumping on, but at the very least, it was a big, fun, bombastic open world to jump around in and punch people and shoot stuff and throw cars and cause explosions, so at the very least, we're giving it credit for that. And also, last but not least, Pokemon Sword and Shield. The big open world you explore here is in yet another divisive game, but the open environments and just the draw distance and the visual style, stuff like that, was just kind of nice to see. We liked the world design. We had problems with other things, but we liked the world. Those are some of our favorite open world games of 2019, but of course, we want to hear yours down in the comments. There's quite a few more, and even if you want to go into some, partially open world stuff, we can talk. We kept our rules here, but you can do whatever you want. So let us know. Anything you've been playing at all, leave it down there. But if you enjoyed this video, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. And if you're new, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell because we put out new videos every single day. Either way, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.